When laying out or setting type for print, the process yields a tangible document, piece of paper, poster, etc., which has the text as ink on a page. The final medium is quite different than a lighted screen displaying a certain amount of pixels to render type on a website. Now let's look at two main ways web typography differs from print and how we can smartly design with that in mind. First, let's talk about desktop fonts versus web fonts. Desktop fonts are used for print layouts and design. They are fonts you install on your computer which give you the ability to use them in word processing programs or design programs. The final mediums they can end up on are pages of paper, posters, billboards, JPEGs, PNGs, the list goes on. Desktop fonts were created with those mediums in mind. Web fonts are a fairly recent phenomenon. These are font files that are not intended to be used in the way desktop fonts are used. Web fonts are created for the purpose of serving up a font on a website that might not be installed on a person's computer. Before recent years, you could only call display fonts that were already native to a person's computer, also known as system fonts. This drastically limited your choices because you had to find ones that were native to multiple operating systems, like Windows or Mac OS X. Now, web fonts have showed up and recently became popular because you have more control and customization over what your users see. Many type foundries and designers have quickly jumped on board with converting their desktop fonts into web fonts. Some simply plug their desktop fonts into a web font converter without making any adjustments and license them for the web as is. This might work well for fonts intended for large sizes, but great web fonts have been re-engineered to work well for the web. That means the desktop license file and web font license file are designed in different ways to fit the medium they are intended for. To add another variable into the mix, different browsers like Safari, Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Firefox handle and render web fonts differently. They sometimes require different web font files, and sometimes type may appear bolder in one browser than the other. This means it'll be a good idea to test how your type is rendering across different browsers. Some type designers meticulously apply font hinting to their typefaces. This is where they're setting up manual mathematical hints at different sizes to make sure the type is rendering how they like it at each size on the screen. Some browsers ignore this and some browsers take this into account. Some popular typefaces have desktop licenses but may not yet be available as web fonts. In this case, you should reach out to the type designer or foundry to see if you can purchase a web font license or find out when one will be released. Do not try to use a desktop license font and convert it to web fonts or serve up desktop font files on your site. Not only is this not smart, but it's also breaking that license agreement for most typefaces. Lastly, let's discuss the second main difference, which is fixed layouts versus fluid layouts. In print or graphic design, you're designing for a fixed layout, meaning the type and elements are arranged in a specific way that's locked into the medium. For example, if I was laying out type for a magazine article, the type is set in a specific place with an exact width and link to the block of text. Once that magazine is finalized and printed, the type and layout remain that way, so you know exactly how the reader is going to see it. With the web, it's much different. Users might be viewing your site on a phone, tablet, or desktop, which all have different screen sizes. Typography that might work great when viewing the site on a desktop computer could take a turn for the worst on a mobile phone. With responsive design, we can create fluid layouts so that our type and layouts can respond to a user's screen size. This gives us a ton of control, such as changing font sizes, layout, widths, and more at certain breakpoints. We'll get into this more later. That's it for now, and good work finishing this stage. I'll see you in the next stage where we'll look at how to choose and use typefaces for the web.